Hey everyone, I am so excited about today's conversation with the Eli Morris, Senior Associate Pastor of Hope Church, Memphis. Now, if you're watching with us today, you probably noticed this is not our usual setup. Don't worry, we still have the green chairs. But given that this was an election week, and in order to be as relevant as possible, we needed to change a few things up. No, we are not only going to talk about the election, but yes, we will address it and spend the majority of our time discussing how we can rebuild trust and come together as a church, as a community, and as a nation in this divided time. In this episode, Eli Morris will help us in an incredibly pastoral way navigate how we can be people who strive for unity and cling to the good. So let's get to it and meet Eli Morris in the green chair. Eli.
Hey, Pastor Jeff.
Hey, Pastor Eli. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
Thanks for being with us in the green chair. This is a very unique
It's very green
episode.
in here.
It's very green in here.
I like that.
Yeah, we've got the green lights, the green plant, the green. I'm surprised you didn't wear green today.
I wasn't thinking.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you so much for being here with us.
It's great to be here.
This is
Thank
fun.
you.
Okay, so before we dive in, obviously I want us to talk about rebuilding trust and what that looks like, and kind of a little bit later on about how we do that as a church, nation, community,
Sure.
right? I want to get, like you talked a few months ago, we had you on here with Pastor Rufus,
Right.
And you mentioned that you've been a pastor for a while. How many years have you been a pastor? And then specifically here at Hope?
31 years, 31 years at Hope.
31 years.
It'll be 32 in June of the next year, yeah.
That's a long time.
Uh-huh.
That's a long time. So before we get into all the other stuff, I feel like a lot of people know you. If they go to Hope, they definitely know you. Community Memphis know you. Tell us something we don't know. Like, what is something that many of us haven't heard or don't know about you? No pressure, right?
Okay, I don't even know if you know all this, but when I was growing up, I was really into the space program, because that's kind of when it was really in its heyday. You're right on the verge of laughing at me.
I am a little bit, but I'm trying to hold it in.
But I was just so into it. And so I wrote to all the astronauts, and they wrote me back and sent me pictures that they had
really?
autographed. Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah.
neat.
And so I was totally into that. Now, I didn't want to be an astronaut because I knew,
Yeah.
I mean, I get sick on the Ferris wheel, so I'm not going to go up in space. But I became very interested in the stars and the moon and everything. And I bought a telescope. I still have a telescope.
Oh, really?
And,
Where is it?
It's in our bedroom, and I'm going to take it up on the roof and show the girls.
That would be
the moon.
really fun.
Yeah. So I used to log every night when I would go out. I would log what I saw and what the temperature was. I was a super astronomy nerd, man.
Really? Mm-hmm. I had no clue about that.
There you go.
And then, okay, but you also do these like running journals. Don't
I
you
do
do that
running
too?
journals.
Like you did the star journals, and then you have running journals?
I did star things on a little index card, and had a little file box that I'd put them in. I'm sure that's somewhere. It's probably up in the attic somewhere.
I was wondering where that is. That would be really neat.
I'll dig around for it.
And the telescope would be really, really cool. Hagen's been on this app. Tommy has an app on your phone, and you can like look all around,
I got that too.
and you can see. And she's like all about. She's
That's
all about
pretty funny.
that. Yeah, that is pretty fun. Okay, so and we've been working together a long time. I was thinking about this too. How many years? Well, first of all, when did we first meet?
I think I'm right about this. I think I met you when you were a high school student.
I think so too.
You graduated 2002 or 3 or 4 or something?
We don't need to say that on the camera. I graduated 2002,
Okay.
high school.
All right. So, yeah, back about that time.
Yeah. No, I remember I was in high school. I was thinking about this. I get this question a lot, but I was in high school, and we were trying to raise money for a mission trip. And I remember, like, on a whim, I was like, maybe I'll write Pastor Eli and Patty Morris a note saying, hey, can you support me? And you said, never would. No, I'm just kidding. You didn't.
Did we do
Yeah,
it?
you did. You did. I
Good,
remember thinking,
good,
that's
good.
really sweet.
I thought this conversation was going to be over.
Yeah, who knew years later I would marry your oldest son, and here we are having this conversation.
That's great.
Small world. Okay, so changing gears a little bit. We're talking about rebuilding trust. And part of that is, I think, getting personal a little bit, if you're comfortable with this. Is there a story or experience in your life where you felt like you had to rebuild trust that you'd be willing to share with us?
The event that jumps into my mind, I mean, I think I think building trust takes time. You can lose trust instantly. I mean, trust can be lost instantly. I was in an email conversation with an acquaintance, a friend, and we were going back and forth. And one particular email that he sent to me, I thought was interesting, and I forwarded that email to another friend and commented on something he had said. I sent it to both of them. I sent it to the guy, and he was really hurt by that, as he should have been.
Yeah.
He writes me back and said, I don't know if you realize what you did, but I thought we were having a private conversation. And man, I was so embarrassed and really sick at my stomach, really.
Yeah.
Because he was right. I had to rebuild trust with him.
Yeah.
That was many years ago. And we've become closer friends, interestingly.
Yeah.
We've become closer friends since but you know what? I'll guarantee this. He wouldn't write something in an email to me anymore that was any way shaky, because he'd be scared I'd mess it up, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but I had to be intentional about rebuilding that trust with him.
I did not know that story. And that makes me, like, hearing it,
I don't
gives
like
me,
telling
like, my
that
heart
story.
rate is so high right now.
I don't like telling that story.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all done something like that, probably with a text message or with an email. And this one was pretty significant for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's important. And so, like, how were you intentional in rebuilding that trust? Do you mind kind of expounding on that? Like, you said you were really, really intentional. Was that just meeting?
Yeah, I just paid better attention to our relationship, our friendship. And I would really check in on him more. Yeah. His parents went through some health issues, and I'd check in with him and tell him I'm praying for them. And so it really, it took it to another level when it just about ended it, you know.
Yeah. That's humbling, you know. I mean, I think that's...
That's why I don't tell that story.
Well, thank you for telling us the story.
And hurtful to me.
And I think that's important to acknowledge, and I appreciate you even sharing that story, because I think that there's something powerful about you even being willing to share that, because I think all of us have messed up in different relationships, and it's easier to talk about the time somebody hurt us and we forgave them. It's harder to talk about the times we hurt somebody else and we need to rebuild that trust. So
exactly.
I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
So pivoting a little bit, one of the things I love that you talked about and mentioned in your sermon this past weekend, which I will mention if nobody has listened to, I loved that sermon. I think it was so on point with the way we should be navigating this season.
Thank you.
But one of the things you mentioned was that regardless of the outcome of this election, right, half of people are going to be upset, and half of people are going to be content or happy with the way it turned out. And
Correct.
So this is a really interesting dynamic that we're walking into. But one of the things that has been so wild about this is it's been, number one, it's still going, you know. It's a little bit exhausting. It's not like a normal election, and it's incredibly divisive, more than I've ever seen in my lifetime. I don't know about for you.
Me too.
So my question to you is how do we begin rebuilding trust? I mean, I don't know if you've seen this on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, people have been mean. People have been angry. People have been, and looking at how do we rebuild trust as a church? How do we rebuild trust as a nation? How do we rebuild trust as a community? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's something unique about this election. There have been close elections before.
Yes.
The Kennedy-Nixon election in 1960, the Gore and Bush in 2000, and then the last one in 2016. They were all close, but there wasn't such anger and evil leading up to it like this one has been. And so everybody is so upset. And that's the thing that makes it a little different. Close races, there's a lot of close races you go, oh man, we were close. And you kind of salute the next person and say, you're my president and I'm here to serve with you. however I can. And that you don't get to, that didn't happen in 2016, it's not happening this year. And so I think you have to, you take a deep breath, first of all. I think we all need a cleansing breath after this thing. I don't know what that'll look like, but I think we all need a break, however anything turns out. But we've had troubles like this. I mean, you know, from April 1861 to May 1865, we had a civil war where people were shooting each other and brothers were killing brothers.
Yes.
And we had to unify again as a nation. And so that, you know, we've had issues like this before. And in my mind, leadership is supremely important. You know, you look back at Abraham Lincoln, who actually died right there at the end of the war, was assassinated. But he had held the Union together with his unbelievable leadership. We need some leadership. And it needs to come from every direction. It needs to come from the president, it needs to come from the Congress, from our governors, our mayors, our faith leaders. We need leadership. And here's something else we need. I was thinking about this today. At the Last Supper, Jesus looks at those disciples and says, I've got a new commandment for you. Love one another. As the Father and I are one, you need to be one.
Wow.
The thing I think that scared him the most about leaving was that they needed to love each other and they needed to be one. And I think as a church, we need to pay attention to that.
And that's especially powerful, even just thinking about Judas sitting at that table too. Like, you know, he's talking about unity and you have Judas in the room, right? And so you're thinking he's about to be betrayed in the greatest way possible. He's talking about, hey, I actually want you to love one another, knowing what's about to happen. I mean, that makes it even more powerful in thinking through that.
Yeah, and I'm, as I said this past weekend, the Republic will survive and God is still on the throne. That's what we need to be totally aware of right now. And half of us are disappointed and half of us are satisfied. And I think those that are disappointed need to understand that the president is who the president is, and I'll be behind that person. The people that are happy need to chill a little bit. You know, I mean, I just don't think we need to exacerbate this deal with either with anger or with enthusiasm, either one.
Yeah, and you jumped right into it, and that was exactly my question to you. Is then now, like, what would your encouragement, or maybe even challenge, which is kind of what you started dipping into, is to people, like the people that are excited, this is what they wanted, the people that are just discouraged and disappointed. And truthfully, like, we have to own the fact that we're having this conversation on Wednesday afternoon before our preview or release of this on Thursday morning. Everything could change. Like, everything could change. It's changing every hour. So we don't even know what all this looks like. But I think it's important that we have a conversation around that, because it's exhausting, right? Like, we're all trying to figure out what on earth is going to be happening and what to expect. And I think I would love to hear from you, like, how do we navigate that on both sides? Because there's both people watching this.
I think we need to check on each other a little bit, especially those who you know are really struggling with how this thing turns out. Check on people and let them know you love them and you're praying for them. Is there anything I can do? And it seems silly to have to do that, but it's not silly right now. We're in a pandemic too. Do you realize that?
Yes, and that's a whole other layer.
We've got racial and social ills.
Yes.
Our economy is still struggling, coming back. But we got to get that thing straightened out. So I mean, people have got a lot of things on their plate right now, and I think we need to check on each other and make sure everybody's okay. And be gracious, be gracious winners if we find ourselves in that situation. I'm going to preach on this in a probably the first of the year in Stirring, and it's Galatians Galatians 5:22, the fruits of the Spirit.
Yes.
Man, if those of us who are believers need to
Yes.
live that verse.
Yes.
That the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, faithfulness, kindness, and self-control. Boom. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what I expect from my leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, I mean, my pastor,
Yeah.
the people I work for, my elected officials. Do I see any of those in their lives? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. That's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that brings a nation back.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need to be people that are pursuing that and living that. I mean, and that's so perfect. Okay, so any kind of final reminders? I mean, you've been a pastor a long time, and that's partially why I wanted to have this conversation with you this exact week, is because I just think it just needs a pastoral care, if you will, feel to like everything that's kind of happening. And so, any final reminders? I was like, okay, let's move forward. How are we moving forward? I love that first. I think that's going to be something I'm just going to be replaying in my head, I think, for the next, who knows how long.
Well, that passage in Hebrews, it says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We need to remember that first. That's number one for us.
Yeah.
That's what we need to claim.
Yes.
Because whoever the president is, in a few years, that person won't be the president again. In 15 years, we'll look back on this and say, man, that was whack, wasn't it? But we're okay.
Yeah.
And I think we need to remember that. I think we need to pray for the president.
Yeah,
I think we need to pray for the president and all of our leaders right now, because it is so heightened, and it needs to get corrected.
Yeah.
And we need to be people of prayer, and we need to model how people should live. It's funny, I was watching, I don't even know what show it was. It may have been CBS Morning on Sunday. There were two families that were next door neighbors. They were great friends. They eat all the time. They go on vacations together. One had a Biden sign, and the other had a Trump sign. And then they had other signs that they had made themselves that says, I heart them, and was pointing to that other house. I heart them. And so they were saying, we're voting in this way, but we love these people. And these people were saying, we love these people too. And that's a great testimony to see in a neighborhood where people can have divergent ideas and yet can still have
love
compassion for each other.
That's really, really good. And you mentioned this other verse too, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, that whole psalm, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And the emphasis there is you walk through it.
Yeah.
You just walk through it. You're not living there. Don't stop and plant. Keep walking. And we just need to keep walking. And that applies to the pandemic. It applies to social unrest, racial tensions. We need to keep walking and doing the right thing. Yeah.
That's so good. Thank you so much.
I love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here with us, especially during this week. And I think it's just so perfect for us to have this conversation and to be covered with these reminders, particularly passages. And that's the perfect ending, just to keep walking. So thank you so much for being here with us. And that is a wrap for our Green Chair conversation with Pastor Eli Morris. Thank you so much for being connected with us today. Don't forget, you can encourage someone today by sharing this conversation with a friend, or watch any previous conversations at hopechurchmemphis.com/GCC, as well as listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast apps. And as always, feel free to email me at greenchair@hopechurchmemphis.com. Love you guys. See you next week.